What do deepfakes, pornography, and sea turtle blood have in common? Dr. Dan Miller has a knack for asking big questions and crunching even bigger data sets, and he's here to explain the research behind some complex and often controversial topics. Professionally Psyched is the podcast that brings you cutting-edge psychology research and real-world insights from our psych community of clinicians, researchers, and educators alike. We're here to explore how psychology shapes our everyday lives and impacts the world around us. Hi everyone, and welcome to Professionally Psyched. I'm Jessica Muller, PhD candidate in Public Health at James Cook University, and before we get started, we'd like to acknowledge the custodians of the land on which we record, and for me today that's the Bindal and Wulgurukaba peoples, and I pay my respects to elders past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and cultures from wherever you may be tuning in from across the country. In this episode of Professionally Psyched, JCU Psychology Honours student Ryan Eade sits down with Dr. Dan Miller, a senior lecturer and social psychology researcher at JCU. Dr. Dan unpacks his academic journey, researching media effects, sexual behaviour, and AI-generated abuse, and delivers insight, humour, and a refreshingly honest look at life in research. So grab your headphones and get ready to get professionally psyched about the excitement of research. Enjoy.
My name is Ryan Eade. I'm an honours student here at JCU. Today I'm chatting to Dr. Daniel Miller.
Hello Ryan, how are you?
Good. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm pretty good.
So, talk our listeners through your academic journey and how you ended up here.
I'm one of these people that went straight from high school to university and sort of have never left university in a way. I come out of high school and I'm not super sure what I want to do. At school I did I was good at math, but I also like English and stuff. And I think a teacher told me to be a lawyer and I knew I didn't want to do that, right? In fact, you did it. You started a law degree, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah, and abandoned it?
Yep.
And
a teacher told me to do it too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's one of the default things they tell you to do, right? Be a lawyer, be an engineer, whatever. So I was interested in science journalism, I guess you could say, like explanatory journalism. So I thought, maybe I'll go study journalism. So I started in a joint degree, a Bachelor of Journalism and Bachelor of Arts. And then within the Bachelor of Arts, you have to pick a major. So I picked psych as my major. I don't fully know why. I think I was just kind of broadly interested in it. Have you ever heard of a guy called Oliver Sacks?
I have heard the name. I couldn't tell you who that is.
So he's a neurologist, and he wrote all these interesting books about people with weird neurological disorders. So his most famous book is The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, I think it's called. And that kind of got me interested in the mind, I guess, even though I'm not really a biological psychologist at all. But yeah, I really enjoyed Oliver Sacks. So I studied psychology because of that, I guess. Maybe not a great reason, but it's weird, the tiny little things you just happen to read a book in that pushes you in a certain little direction, right? So yeah, I'm doing journalism and psychology classes. I didn't mind journalism. I found the kind of theoretical classes more interesting than the actual practical classes, right? So we had a subject on the history of communications, and they talked about the printing press in early modern Europe and Elizabeth Eisenstein and these kind of very theoretical topics. I like that stuff. We actually had to go and do an internship in a newspaper. I didn't. I wasn't particularly interested. So that kind of made me think maybe the actual work of a journalist is not for me. So I start to gravitate more towards the psychology end of things. I did end up finishing my journalism degree. But yeah, I was, by the time I was in my third year, I probably knew I was more interested in going on and do something psych related. So I managed to get into honours. I had to pick up some extra subjects because they changed the requirements halfway through. So one year I think I had to pick up 2 or 3 extra subjects in order to qualify to get into fourth year. But I did and did a research project that kind of related to both journalism and psychology. We're looking at media reporting on ethnic crime and how that can influence attitudes towards different ethnic groups using kind of an experimental methodology. So it's kind of social psych, prejudice, perceptions type stuff. but also taking in elements of media reporting. And I liked that. That was fun. I liked designing a study and taking an idea and sort of bringing it to fruition, which I guess you're in that kind of same situation at the moment, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that actually you're kind of in exactly the same boat, right? Because, I'm co-supervising Ryan. I'm not the main supervisor, but you're pretty much in that I have an idea and let's try and make it into a research project.
Yeah, I like the practical application, definitely. You mentioned that while you were in journalism, you were more drawn to the theory rather than the practice. Would you say that has continued?
Yes. Yeah, well, I did... Okay, so I did my 4th year. I thought, research is really cool. I never really wanted to be a clinician of any description. I was always interested more in the side of psychology as a science, as a research endeavor, as opposed to the practicalities and application of psychology, in a clinical context. So that is why I decided, I might as well just go on and do a PhD. And fortunately, I had a good supervisor, and we worked well together. So I thought, I want to go. There's scope to do a PhD under this guy, who was Peter Raggett, who is since retired. But yeah, he was my original PhD advisor. So yeah, for my PhD, I was still sort of riffing on that media theme and social psychology. I did an assignment in 4th year where we had to critique a new topic within psychology. And at the time, there was lots of talk about pornography and the effect that it has on consumers, right? On their attitudes and sexual behaviors. I heard a researcher interviewed on the radio talking about the effects of pornography. And I just thought, there's no way the effects are that pronounced, right? Media effects, if you look at effect sizes, they tend to be small. They're important because a media is disseminated over an entire population. So a small effect size over an entire population can be quite relevant, right? But generally at the individual level, the effect sizes tend to be small. So as I came into deciding I'm going to study pornography with an eye to being sort of somewhat skeptical of all the rhetoric around, a porn apocalypse is coming to destroy the world, right? I purposely tried to take a more kind of middle of the ground approach. Within the pornography effects world, there are people who are really super anti-pornography. Sometimes they're coming at it from a feminist scholarship perspective. Sometimes they're coming at it from a religious perspective almost, or a moralizing perspective. There's also a group of researchers who are super pro-pornography. They're the whole thing is just a over-exaggeration and it's a healthy expression of sexuality, all this kind of stuff. I guess I'm kind of somewhere in the middle.
Would you say you brought a bit more balance to that discussion?
Well, I would hope so, or at least that's how I see my research. I'm sure the people who are very pro-pornography would think I'm too anti-pornography, and the people who are very anti-pornography would think I'm too pro-pornography, right? So being in the middle, you sort of get both camps that are mad at you. It's a very highly ideologically charged area of research, for sure. So yeah, I tried to be sort of in the middle on that, focusing specifically on men's use of pornography, kind of taking a social learning perspective, Bandura, those kind of guys. And Bandura wrote about, media, how media can model certain behaviors and sort of nudge people in certain directions. It's not a, really powerful shove in a direction. It's more like a little bit of a nudge. So that's what I was trying to do with my PhD research. So that sort of got me into researching, media effects, but also researching sexuality as well. And, since then I've done there was a big international collaboration called the International Sex Survey, where they got researchers from 40 different countries. They got a bunch of sexual well-being measures, and they were going to translate them into different languages and try and collect a really big international sample. So I was lucky enough to be invited to be sort of involved in that as the Australian representative. I didn't have to translate anything because most scales are written in English, but my job was to get ethics in Australia and collect data in Australia. But the idea was that a whole slew of papers would come out of this. The first round of papers would be a psychometric assessment of all these instruments. So, for example, some of the people on the team are really interested in compulsive sexual behavior disorder, which is a disorder that's recognized in the ICD, the International Classification of Disease, but not in the DSM. So it's kind of like a controversial new topic as to whether compulsive sexual behavior actually exists as a disorder or not. So they would take a scale that's been designed to measure that and then translate it into different languages. The idea of doing like a psychometric assessment to see that this scale is fit for purpose in different languages, and also kind of trying to establish like a set of norms so you can know, hey, in the population level, this is what the average score is, and people who are above this score might be, elevated and at risk for developing this disorder, for example. So we've done a whole bunch of studies from there. I've been lucky enough to sort of be the lead author on one of the studies looking at a measure of relationship satisfaction. It's a really dead simple measure. It's a one-item measure. I think we talked about actually in our supervisory sessions before. I kind of like one-item measures.
We did, yeah.
Yeah. Some people are like super against them. I think as long as it's kind of like a very intuitive question, one-item measures can be okay in certain circumstances. For example, in a big survey where you have lots and lots of measures, like the real killer on a survey is it's so long that you start to get poor quality data. So the more measures you have, the shorter they kind of need to be. And that's one of the things you were thinking about as you were designing your project, right?
Well, it's got a few measures. It's got 3 different measures.
That's right. And so it's always this like balance between trying to get as much information as we can, but also trying to make it short enough that people will actually do it, right? And we'll get decent quality data out of it. So I'm leading this particular paper, so looking at like relationship satisfaction, comparing males to females, or people with diverse gender identities. That was another big focus of the International Sex Survey, was trying to get a big sample of trans people and non-binary people who are often excluded from traditional research looking at sexual well-being measures. Yeah, so that was cool. That was a cool experience. Because it's such a big team, you end up having to do a lot of... You write the manuscript, you send it out, everyone reviews it. So you've got like 50 different people reviewing it. So some people are saying this is a problem, some people are saying that's good, some people are giving you advice that kind of conflicts. So you've got to be sort of the manager of that and try and integrate everyone's suggestions, but knowing that you can't, please everyone, right? Just a reality of the situation. But that's been a fun experience. That paper's under review. That's the thing about academia, is that you do research project 3 years ago, we did the project. 2 years ago, I wrote it up in a paper, and it's since been under review for that long. Sometimes you do get lucky. You submit something and it gets reviewed within like 2 months, and you don't have, only minimal changes are required. But that's probably atypical. It's probably more like, you submit a paper and it sits around for like a year before it actually gets published.
Were there any surprising findings?
Oh, here's something interesting. So relationship satisfaction seems to decline with age, and it declines with length in a relationship. So maybe that's not surprising, but you start out high on relationship satisfaction at the beginning of the relationship, and it sort of goes down, and then you kind of get to a point and it kind of levels off. So that was cool to be up to in such a big sample. We had like, I think it was 50,000 participants filled out the relationship, like were in a relationship, so they could fill out the relationship satisfaction questionnaire.
Wow.
Like huge sample, right? Never had that experience of having, such a large sample. So that was interesting. There's a relationship between number of children you have and relationship satisfaction. So your satisfaction you feel towards your partner actually goes down the more children you have. Probably because then, you're just spending less time with each other, right? So you're focusing on the children instead. Sometimes, you might feel more like you're a manager of a boarding house for rowdy 5-year-olds as opposed to a romantic partnership. But yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, so yeah, relationship satisfaction is an interesting little variable, and it was cool to be able to see that in such a large sample. The thing that you don't think about with statistical significance, your p-value, it's a function of your effect size and your sample size. So when you have a huge sample, like 50,000 participants, everything becomes statistically significant. So you can have like a really, really small correlation. It's statistically significant at the 0.001 level, right? So you have to like throw out p-values essentially and instead focus on effect size, because effect size doesn't change as a function of sample size.
it's this excitement about statistics that makes you such a popular undergrad lecturer.
Oh, you're very kind to say so, but yeah, that is my standard little bugbear spiel thing about the difference between p-values and effect size, and I wish we would just kind of shift a bit more towards effect size.
So they said that there was going to be a porn apocalypse, which never came. Do you think that...
Well, some people would say it did come, and that's why, sexual, like levels of sexual assault or blah, 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 blah. This is all the result of the kind of the pornification of society or whatever. Sorry, what was your question?
Well, it flows from that, is that they're sort of now, the discussion is around AI, and there'll be an apocalypse with that. And I know that that's another area that you're interested in.
Yes. So, yeah, lately I've been doing work on deepfakes with my collaborator, Claire Summeray. If you want to hear more about that, in the first season of this podcast series, I interviewed Claire about the deepfake research. But, yeah, that's another sort of interesting area, and it's on that kind of media effects kind of theme. I guess I'm interested in researching whatever's, like, topical at the time. So, like, 5 years ago, pornography was the big topical thing within media effects, and today it's AI and deepfakes and whether people can detect deepfakes, and we have experiments showing that they're pretty bad at doing that. And in fact, you helped out with one of those experiments, an eye tracking experiment. But yeah, the one of the implications or the nefarious ways in which deepfakes have been used is for creating non-consensual pornographic depictions of people. So you have this whole new kind of sexual abuse, what they're calling, it's a mouthful, they're calling it digitally altered image-based sexual abuse, right?
And that's when you make a deep fake of somebody that you know, or a celebrity, etc.
Yeah. Yes. So most of the deepfakes that are out there seem to be, like, here's something interesting. So we were interested in the history of deepfakes, right? So we worked with this historian of technology, a guy called Hallam Stevens, shout out to Hallam, to write a kind of like a history of deepfakes. So deepfakes are relatively new, right? Like, they start in 2017 on Reddit. The very first video deepfake was taking the actress Gal Gadot and inserting her into a pornographic scene. So, like, from their very inception, deepfakes have been used to create non-consensual pornography of celebrities initially. But now, as this technology becomes easier to use and you need less and less reference footage, that has opened up the possibility of people with relatively little technological know-how, like they don't need to know how to code, they can use pre-designed apps, are able to take reference footage of people they know and create pornographic images. So there are instances in which people have been doing this in order to harass, extort, blackmail individuals. We've seen the relatively recent incidents of deepfakes being created within high schools within New South Wales and Victoria. So this is a whole new problem that I guess when I started my PhD on pornography 10 years ago, I never would have envisioned that this would be a problem of the future. So far, I haven't really done much sort of connecting those two threads, right? So I've researched pornography, I've researched deepfakes, and you think it would make sense for me to kind of connect them somehow.
To be connected.
Yeah, I just haven't quite thought of what the study would be. If anyone has any ideas, please let me know. It's got to be something more than just. I guess you could do a survey. You could ask people about it, but then I don't know. The
So
survey would just be like
Daniel.miller1 at JCU. If you guys have any ideas,
yeah, please tell me, what could we do looking at deepfake pornography. I have been working with a researcher around this recently. They were looking at an analysis of Reddit threads discussing AI pornography, and that is sort of under review currently. So hopefully that'll come out soonish, fingers crossed. But yeah, it seems like a lot of the discussion that people, posting on Reddit about deepfakes, it came down to my significant other has created a deepfake of, and insert a person from my life, a neighbor, their boss, whatever. What the hell do I do about this? So that's a whole new confusing world for us out there.
What do you love most about teaching at JCU?
Teaching is teaching kind of, like I said, originally I wanted to be a journalist and do like science journalism, right? Because I like to be able to take something that's complicated and think about how can I explain this in a simple way. Because I feel like the only time I really learn stuff is when I am forced to try and explain it to others.
Okay.
And teaching, like delivering a lecture and trying to take something complicated like, statistics and explain it to people kind of scratches that itch for me. So I like it in that, like it's like a challenge of taking something complicated and being able to express it simply to others in a digestible format. Yeah, I like interacting with students. I like enthusiastic students who want to do a research project or come in with an idea, and we can work on taking that idea they have and turning it into something that is doable as a research project, and something that I love that moment where we have the data file and we've cleaned it and we've calculated the total scores, and then we go and run the analysis and we can see, definitively, did this experiment work or not. That's cool, especially when you can do that with someone for the first time. They have that experience.
I never would have thought that is cool, but it is actually really cool.
Yeah,
that's something that undergrad students can definitely look forward to. So what advice would you give to students who are just starting out their pathway into psychology?
I would say it's okay if you haven't got your entire career path planned at this point in your life. It is a natural progression to start thinking you're going to do something and change your mind as a result of experience, right? I think I've talked to students in the past who are like of the opinion that if they stopped and switched to something else, it's them like failing or giving up. And it's like, no, that's you tried something, you thought you might like it, and you didn't like it, so you moved on. Like that this seems logical to me, right?
That's great advice. What advice would you give to students who are a bit further along in their psych journey about master's places? Because that is a source of tension.
Yeah, it's a big source of tension. I've had students, I would say, keep in mind that the first time you apply for masters is not the only time you can apply for masters, right? I've had lots of students who applied for clinical masters, didn't get it the first time, went and worked for 2 years in some psych-related thing. They might be like a youth worker or something like that, and then applied afterwards and got in. So I think people, they're right to be concerned. Like masters is very competitive, right? It's probably a bit better now that we have different kinds of master streams. So we've got the masters of clinical, the masters of professional. So yeah, masters is competitive, but you're not barred from applying more than once, right? And you're not barred from applying to multiple programs. So I would say if you get rejected the first time around, it's not the end of the line. There's go and work in something semi-related, like build up your experience in the field, and then come back and apply again.
We're going to end on this question, Dan.
Okay.
Tell me.
High pressure. Yep.
When I punch your name into Google Scholar, it shows me all of the things that you have published. Mm-hmm. There's one in particular that stands out.
Okay.
And that is the development of reference intervals and hematology of juvenile green sea turtles, which was published in a veterinary journal.
Yes.
So what's happened there?
The story with that one is that statistics is statistics is statistics, no matter if you're applying it to humans or you're applying it to the analysis of sea turtle blood. That really came from, I know people who work over in vet science. This guy came to me, he said, I have colleagues in Thailand who work at a turtle rehabilitation center. They've collected this turtle blood and they want to create like reference intervals to know like, is this too much or too little, let's say iron, for example. But we don't have the statistical expertise. And then he showed me this book put out by whatever veterinary organization, the veterinary pathology organization or whatever, explaining how it is you go about creating reference intervals based on means and standard deviations and sample sizes and creating confidence intervals, all this kind of stuff. And he said, can you follow this, what they're saying? So I just read the thing and I was like, yeah, this is actually relatively simple. So he said, leave it with me and I'll have a go and I'll do it. So statistics is statistics, right?
I would say that is that's a really good illustration of the skills that you learn in this degree.
Yep.
Are applicable from everything from deepfakes to sea turtles.
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks very much for chatting today.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thanks for listening to Professionally Psyched. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the ongoing support of our Psych community. If you'd like to show your support or if you want us to cover anything on the pod, reach out via our emails, and don't forget you can listen to full episodes on Spotify.